Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Faith, Lies, and Confusion. I'm your host, Godless Reggie. I apologize, this episode was supposed to be aired yesterday, but because of some unfortunate circumstances, I had to postpone it until today, but we're still here. Okay, so what's up, everybody? Today's episode is about a religion that I am 100% ignorant on. I know absolutely nothing about it. Um, Except for the fact that it comes from the Middle East. I may actually be pronouncing it incorrectly. I know that I have it spelled wrong, but from my understanding, it is pronounced Mandaeism. So I'm gonna read a little bit about Mandaeism. I'm going to go to my favorite source, which is ChatGPT. I'll cross-reference it as well. Give me one moment, folks. And how y'all doing today? Hopefully, well. Okay. So according to ChatGPT, what is Mandaeism? Mandaeism. Mandaeism is one of the world's oldest surviving Gnostic religions, dating back nearly 2,000 years. It is monotheistic and has historically been practiced mainly in Iraq and Iran, with diaspora communities today in countries like Australia, Sweden, and also the United States. Their core beliefs: one supreme God, often called Rabbi, the Great Life. They actually believe in strong dualism, which is light, good spiritual world versus darkness, which is the material world. Salvation through knowledge, gnosis. Spiritual knowledge is the path to liberation. Baptism as a central ritual. Frequent full immersion baptisms and flowing water rivers are required. Sacred texts: the Ginza Rabbah, the Great Treasure, the main holy book, and the Book of John. Important religious texts distinct from Christian Gospels of John. Important figure: John the Baptist is highly revered as a major prophet. Unlike Christianity, Mandaeans do not follow Jesus as a central figure. They view John as the true teacher of baptism. Who are the Mandaeans? Followers are called Mandaeans. Today, their global population is small, estimated under 100,000, making it a vulnerable minority religion. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good brief explanation of this religion. Basically, they follow what John says. I don't know why it's not called John something that goes along with it, but I'm sure the more that I read into this actual religion and belief, we'll find out. Let's look at a video and see what we can find out on YouTube. Give me one moment.
In the Middle East, we tend to view it in a rather simplified and generalizing way. In the Middle East, people are Muslim, basically. And while, yes, there are, of course, a lot of Muslims in the Middle East, there's a whole host of other religious minorities that have lived there historically and today, and not just Jews and Christians. And one of those less known religious minority groups are known as the Mandaeans. Mandaeism can be described as a monotheistic religion with strong dualistic tendencies, similar to other movements like Gnosticism. It shares a lot of elements with other religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism, but of course constitutes its own unique tradition and religion. The word Mandaeism or Mandaeans comes from the word manda or mandai, which means knowledge in the old language called Mandaean, a Semitic language that only survives today through the liturgy of the Mandaean priests. In Arabic and Muslim contexts, they have also often been known as which basically means those who baptize. This all consists of terms which is a religious group mentioned in the Quran alongside Christianity and Judaism as the people of the book. Some historically and today have therefore that the sins in are in fact the Mandeans. The Mends have most of history been confined or located in the southern regions of Iraq along the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, but their actual geographic origins are rather uncertain and unknown. Many believe that they originate in Palestine in the first 3 centuries AD, and maybe in connection to certain Jewish groups along the Jordan River that put a heavy emphasis on the practice of baptism as a ritual practice. Now, this, of course, sort of very much connects them to movements like the Essenes and with John the Baptist. In fact, John the Baptist, who very famously baptized Jesus in the New Testament, has a very central role to the Mandaean religion. He isn't considered a founder by any means, but he has a very central role as a kind of prophet and one of the main sort of propagators. Interestingly, while they share many aspects and mythological backgrounds of the Abrahamic faiths, they tended to have a different perspective on it a lot of the time. Adam, the first man that God created, is venerated, and Mandaeism is considered to have originated with him. So similar to, for example, Islam, they view themselves as the religion of mankind, other as sort of deviations from this original religion. They also venerate Adam's son Seth and one of Noah's sons Shem as transmitters of Mandaean faith. This also means that all the prophets mentioned in the Testament, as such few, considered false. Similarly, while they affirm that John the Baptist baptized us, they consider Christ Balls and Jesus as a kind of heretic and misleader who deviated from John's true religion. We should always avoid thinking about religions as or through a kind of Christian framework, as having a founder and a sacred scripture, for example. But there are a few texts that sort of contain a lot of these basic Mandaean teachings. The most prominent of these can be said to be a book called Ginza Riba, or simply Ginza, which is a collection of theological, historical, and ritual teachings. There's also the Mandaean Book of John, which is thought to have been authored by John the Baptist himself, and contains stories about his life and teachings, and many other scriptures of varying sorts as well. Scholars disagree on when these texts were written or compiled, some placing them, or at least a few of them, after the coming of Islam in the 7th century, and others place them a couple of centuries before that. Now, if we are to talk about the beliefs or theology or cosmology of this religion, we need to make some things clear first.
Okay. Okay, I just want to stop it for 1 second because one thing that was interesting, well, there were several things that were very, very interesting that he said, but one thing in particular that stuck out to me is how they talk about the book of John, right? They're putting the book of John and they're correlating it with John the Baptist. That's different from Christianity. I mean, that's not what I've been, what I've come to learn as far as what biblical texts mean. But again, he is making it clear that it is separate from Christianity. But that's just interesting that he would notate that, or not really notate it, but that that's their belief. I'm not saying he's wrong or anything like that because obviously I don't believe any of it, but I'm just highlighting that, and I'm gonna finish letting the video play.
Like with many other religions, there isn't one clear story or agreed upon version of the cosmological beliefs. Often with religions that don't share the sort of institutionalized structure of a Catholic Church, for example, there isn't the same emphasis put on orthodoxy or a certain orthodoxy that has been sort of preserved. As historian of religions, Jordan Jacobson Buckley points out, quote, "The sheer mass of variations in the creation mythology makes it impossible to appoint one specific version as the original," end quote. In any case, the basic common elements of the religious beliefs are, as I said earlier, strongly dualistic, with a huge emphasis on light versus darkness, purity versus uncleanliness, and so on. They are a monotheistic faith, as they believe in one almighty transcendent God, which they call Hay Rebbe. And the highest sort of part of the cosmos, a pure world of lights in which this God resides, is also home to other sort of spiritual luminous beings. And the most important of these is a spirit that they refer to as Manda ed Hay, which means knowledge of life. And it is particularly through this spiritual being, similar to an angel almost, it is through this being that the Mandaean teachings and religion has been conveyed throughout history to different prophets like Seth or to John the Baptist. There's then a kind of hierarchy of existence from this highest pure world of light right down to the lowest sort of dark bowels of creation where evil and sort of darkness rule. And in between these two extremes, the material world of human existence exists or is situated and contains elements of both of these extremes. According to some scholars, Mandaeism is here rather similar to Gnosticism, as it views the human material body as created by a kind of demiurge through the powers of evil. The material body is therefore seen as a kind of prison of the soul, and the soul's goal in life is to escape this body after death and make its way to the higher world of pure light. But how is this achieved? Well, this brings us, of course, to the practices of this religion. As I mentioned, there is no orthodoxy in Mandaeism. This is actually a good example to show that, for the most part, religions are usually something that we do rather than something we believe. The beliefs of the Mandaeans are strongly varied, but the ritual practices are pretty consistent throughout. We could therefore classify Mandaeism primarily as a religion of orthopraxy, there's right practice, rather than orthodoxy, right belief. In this cosmological scheme that I just described, water is the only thing in the material world that is entirely pure. Through water, one can remove sin and uncleanliness and give the soul a kind of rebirth, similar to Christian and early Jewish ideas. This is why the ritual of baptism, called masputa, is perhaps the most central practice in Judaism. Contrary to Christianity, where one is baptized only once, the Mandaeans traditionally are baptized once every week on Sundays. One is to be baptized in running water, traditionally in one of the two rivers in Iraq, and this has some problem for a few diaspora communities today. Through baptism, the soul is purified, which will help it in its journey.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to touch on. So, as he's saying that they get baptized once a week, I've heard of people being baptized more than once in their life, but definitely not once a week. So I think that's very interesting how they practice that. Not saying that one's wrong and one's right, but I think that would make a little bit more sense based on the fact that you kind of can't help but sin, you know. So I guess you would be washing away your sins weekly. I think that would be more effective if this was something that was real. I don't know. Maybe I'm just caught up in the moment and learning something new, and I'm like, oh yeah, this seems like it's right. I mean, because again, I don't believe any of it, but I just I like that for some reason.
To the world of lights after death. The baptism is performed by a class of priests and usually in a place of worship called a mandi, so usually placed beside the river. A second important ritual is called masita, a kind of ascension of the soul ceremony. This can take many different forms, but is primarily performed to help departed souls on the journey to the world of lights, which is plagued by demons and other nasty things. Mandaeans also pray daily, but the number of prayers can vary, everything from 3 to 5 or 7 times a day. As you might expect, also, the idea of purity and cleanliness is very important to the religion, and Mandaeans have been and are still rather strict about not allowing anyone to marry outside of the religion. They have also traditionally not allowed people to convert to Mandaeism, which has partly led to its sort of decline in numbers. Other ethical ideas and practices include a kind of pacifism. Mandaeans aren't allowed to carry any weapons, for example, and giving to charity, and also a ritual fast that lasts for 36 days. The Mandaeans have always basically been a minority in this region, which has been ruled by many empires and kingdoms throughout history. And as usual with minority groups, this means they haven't always been treated all that well. They were persecuted and oppressed under the Sasanian Persian Empire before the arrival of the Arabs and Islamic sort of conquerors. As I mentioned earlier, because of their identification with the Sabaeans in the Quran, they have usually been identified with the people of the book and thus have retained certain rights and freedom of religion and you could say sort of a certain level of autonomy throughout the Muslim period. But of course, this doesn't mean that they weren't persecuted from time to time by the Muslim rulers as well. In no period has this been more prominent, perhaps, than in the last century or so, with the increasing instability in the Middle East, both politically and in terms of rising religious fundamentalism. During the rule of the Ba'ath Party of Saddam Hussein and Iraq, and especially after his execution and the war in 2003, the Mandaeans were given such a hard time that the majority have by now emigrated to regions outside of Middle East. It's estimated that around 80% of Mandaeans live in diaspora communities around the world, which is a rather recent development. This has led to certain conflicts within the community regarding things like integration and how much the religious practices and beliefs can be modified according to new contexts. In a place like Sweden, for example, which is rather cold for at least one half of the year, and in which even the waters outside can freeze, this of course creates problems regarding how to gain access to running water for the baptism rituals. And this has led to some internal conflicts where some allow compromises like indoor pools, while others don't want to make this compromise. Similarly, intermarriage with other religious groups have been heated discussions, as has been the question that people are allowed to convert. The Mandaean religion is also strongly connected to ethnicity, much like religions like the Yazidis or to some degree Judaism as well. And your identity as a Mandaean is primarily determined by your parents being Mandaean. And so this is the reason why conversion has usually been neglected. It's hard to say how many Mandaeans exist in the world today, but estimates place them everywhere between 40,000 to 100,000 people, with, as I said, 80% of them living outside of the Middle East today. So what do you think? Have you ever heard of Mandaeism? And what are your thoughts on this fascinating religion? Let's discuss in the comments. And
So A lot of things he was saying about this, about the Mandaeans, actually, like the fact that they tend to mind their business, right? They don't try to force their religion on anyone. They stay to themselves. As long as you don't fuck with them, it seems like they won't fuck with you. I like that. Now I know that's it's going to cause a little bit of conflict, with their baptisms weekly when they go to different countries, but because of the climate, you can't always get in pools, and you can't always definitely can't always get into to rivers and shit. So I'm sure that's quite difficult for them. But I respect all religions that respect me, that don't do me any harm. They've never oppressed my people. Mm. So for the most part, what I've learned from listening to him, it was actually refreshing for the most part. I've heard of a couple other religions in that area that are like that too, but it's quite refreshing. So let me read a little bit about Mandaeism according to Wikipedia. Give me one moment. Okay, so Mandaeism, sometimes known as Nassoranism or Sabanism, is a Gnostic, dualistic, and ethnic religion with Greek, Iranian, and Jewish influences. Its adherents, the Mandaeans, revere Adam, Abel, Seth, Enos, Noah, Shem, Aram, and especially John the Baptist. Mandaeans consider Adam, Seth, Noah, Shem, and John the Baptist prophets, with Adam being the founder of the religion and John being the greatest and final prophet. The Mandaeans speak an Eastern Aramaic language known as Mandaic. The name Mandaean comes from the Aramaic manda, meaning knowledge, within the Middle East, but outside their community. The Mandaeans are more commonly known as the Suba or the Sabians. The term Suba is derived from the Aramaic root related to baptism. The term Sabians derives from the mysterious religious group mentioned three times in the Quran. The name of this unidentified group, which is implied in the Quran to belong to the people of the book, was historically claimed by the Mandaeans as well as several other religious groups in order to pay legal protection, Dima, as offered by Islamic law. Occasionally, Mandaeans are also called Christians of Saint John, in the belief uh, that they were a direct survival of the Baptist disciples. Further research, however, indicates this to be a misnomer, as Mandaeans consider Jesus to be a false prophet. The core doctrine of the faith is known as Nasaruta, also spelled Nasarutha, and meaning Nasarina Nasis, or divine wisdom. These Nazarenes are divided into Tama, Tamaduta priesthood and Mandayuta, the latter derived from their term for knowledge, Manda. Knowing Manda is also the source of the term Mandaism, which encompasses their, entire culture, rituals, beliefs, and faith associated with the doctrine of Nasaruta. Followers of Mandaism are called Mandaeans, but also be called Nazareans, Gnostic, utilizing the Greek word gnosis for knowledge, or Sabians. The religion has primarily been practiced around the lower Karun, Euphrates, and Tigris, and the rivers that surround the Shat al Arab waterway, part of southern Iraq and Khuzestan province in Iran. As of 2007, there are believed to be between 60,000 and 70,000 Mandaeans worldwide. Until the Iraq War, almost all of them lived in Iraq. Many Mandaean Iraqis have since fled their country because of the turmoil created by the 2003 invasion of Iraq and subsequent occupation by the United States Armed Forces, and the related rise of sectarian violence by extremists. In 2007, the population of Mandaeans in Iraq had fallen to approximately 5,000. The Mandaeans have remained separate and intensely private. Reports of them and their religion have come primarily from outsiders, particularly Julius Heinrich Peterman, and Orientals, as well as from Nicholas Sufi, a Syrian Christian who was the French vice consul of Mount Council in Mosul in 1887, and British culture anthropologist Lady E.S. Drower. There is an early, if highly prejudiced, account by the French traveler Jean-Baptiste Taverner from the 1650s. Etymology: the English spelling Mandaeism is a hypercorrection of Mandaeism, which is built on Manda using the suffix ism. The word Mandaean in turn is derived from Mandaic Mandea, um, which also derives from the word Manda. On the basis of cognates in other Aramaic dialects, Semitics such as Mark Lidzbarki and Rudolf Machuch have translated the term Manda as knowledge, with characteristics assimilations of into the following consonant, mid, medial, nd, hence becoming dd. This etymology suggests that Mandaeans may well be the only sect surviving from late antiquity to identify themselves explicitly as Gnostics. Origins, according to the Mandaean text, which recounts their early history, the Haran Gawata, the scroll of great revelation, which was authored between the 4th and 6th centuries. The Nazarene Mandaeans, who were disciples of John the Baptist, left Jerusalem and migrated to Media in the 1st century CE, reportedly due to persecution. The immigrants first went to Haran, possibly Haran, the modern city, the modern day Turkey, and then the Median Hills in Iran before finally settling in southern Mesopotamia, modern day Iraq. According to Richard Horsley, Inner Haran is most likely Wadi Huran in present day Syria, which Nabateans controlled. Earlier, the Nabateans were at war with Herod Antipas, who had been sharply condemned by the prophet John, eventually executing him, and were thus potentially predisposed toward a group loyal to John. Okay, so that's enough for now. I think a lot of that is interesting. Everything is always predicated off of wars and what happens and what doesn't happen. Same situation. It's sad that these people were persecuted, and things happen to them, and that's why the population has basically dwindled down to next to nothing at this point. But it's just another situation where invasions, colonizations, and where certain countries just can't mind their own business. So I'll stop right there for a little bit and I'll play another video from a person who's an expert.
Mandeans believe in a dualistic cosmology. The Baptist, whom they consider the greatest and final prophet. Mandeans believe in a dualistic cosmology, where the world is divided between the realms of light and darkness. Their sacred text, the Ginza Rba, Great Treasure, contains spiritual teachings, hymns, and accounts of creation. 1. One God, Heyi Rabbi. Mandeans worship a single, supreme God known as Heyi Rabbi, the Great Life, who embodies goodness and light. 2. Dualism. The religion emphasizes the eternal conflict between the world of light, goodness, purity, and the world of darkness, evil, materialism. 3. Gnosis, knowledge. Mandeism teaches that spiritual salvation is achieved through gaining secret knowledge, gnosis, of the divine, freeing the soul from the material world. 4. John the Baptist. Unlike Christians, Mandeans do not view John the Baptist as a forerunner to Jesus but rather as their primary prophet, rejecting Jesus' divinity. While Mandeism is not divided into many sects, it is primarily split based on geographic locations. 1. Iraqi Mandeans, the largest group, traditionally located in southern Iraq, particularly around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which play a crucial role in their rituals. 2. Iranian Mandeans, a smaller community in southwestern Iran, mainly in the Khuzestan province, preserving the faith despite significant challenges. 3. Diaspora communities, Due to political instability and religious persecution, many Mandeans have emigrated to Western countries, forming small communities in the United States, Australia, and Europe. 1. Baptism, Masbuta, central to Mandean rituals. Baptism is performed frequently in natural flowing water, rivers, symbolizing spiritual purification and the connection to the world of light. 2. Daily prayers and ablutions. Practitioners perform daily prayers and ritual ablutions, facing north, as a sign of devotion to the divine. 3. The Feast of the Great Shishlam, Parwanaya, a significant 5-day festival celebrating creation and the spiritual world, involving communal prayers, rituals, and feasting. 4. Marriage and funerary rites. Mandeans have unique ceremonies for marriage and death, aiming to maintain spiritual purity and guide the soul back to the world of light. Today, Mandeism is considered an endangered religion, with an estimated 60,000 to 70,000 followers worldwide. The faith has faced severe challenges due to political instability, religious persecution, and forced migration, particularly in Iraq and Iran. The Mandean diaspora has been actively working to preserve their language, Mandaic, and religious traditions in the modern world, despite facing pressures of assimilation. Mandeism is a fascinating glimpse into an ancient spiritual tradition that has endured for millennia. Its focus on purity, light, and sacred knowledge offers timeless wisdom for seekers of spiritual truth. If you found this exploration of Mandeism enlightening, please like,
Okay. So another a good video. I liked how that one was short and sweet in comparison to the other one because it's giving us the same exact knowledge. He's just wrapping it up quick. I like that. I don't have a lot of patience for long blah 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 blah. So he got in there and got out. So let's do a little bit more reading, and I'm not going to be here too long either. We've been here 27 minutes. This religion doesn't really give a lot of context, in my opinion. So I do the best I can to read what I can for y'all. Give me a moment. Okay, now this is according to Google. I'm gonna bypass anything that I think that we've already read. Okay, so that's something that I didn't realize. Okay, so the core beliefs: monotheism and dualism. Mandaeans believe in the god Hayai, who lives in the world of light, while a corrupting force, Ruha, exists in the world of darkness. Gnosticism: the religion emphasizes gaining special knowledge. Manda, am I even showing the screen? Yes. A special knowledge, Manda, to aid the soul's journey back to the world of light after death. Prophets and figures, they revere Adam, Seth, Enoch, and notably John the Baptist, while rejecting Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. View of Jesus. Jesus is traditionally viewed as a false prophet. Rituals in Holy Book. Baptism, the Mas Buddha, the central recurring ritual performed on Sundays in flowing natural water to wash away sins and pollution. Holy Book, the Ginza Rabba, the great treasure, which includes scriptures from Adam, Seth, and John. Orientation, prayers are directed towards the north, which is associated with the world of light. The Kushta, a ritual handshake symbolizing truth and connecting to the light. Origin and modern status. The origin is rooted in pre-Christian Babylonian era Mesopotamia community. The religion is ethno-religious, which, also those born to Mandaean parents are considered members. Demographics: due to persecution, the population has significantly declined in Iraq and Iran, with large diaspora communities in Sweden, Australia, and even the United States. Key symbols and practices: Rasta, white garments worn during rituals; myrtle wreath used in baptismal and funeral ceremonies; and the mandi, the holy, often temporary structure for community and religious life near water. Okay, interesting. So let's read a little bit from little bit more from Wikipedia. Let's pull it back up. Give me a second here. Okay, so many scholars who specialize in Mandaeism, including Jerron Jacobson Buckley, agree with the historical accounts. Others, however, argue for southwestern Mesopotamian origins of the group. Some scholars take the view that Mandaeism is older and dates back to pre-Christian times. Mandaeism claims that their religion predates Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and believe that they are direct descendants of Shem, Noah's son. They also believe that they are the direct descendants of John the Baptist's original Nazarene Mandaean disciples in Jerusalem. History: during the Parthian rule, Mandaeans flourished under royal protection. This protection, however, did not last, with the Sasanian Emperor Bahram I ascending to the throne and his high priest Carter, who persecuted all non-Zoroastrians. At the beginning of the Muslim conquest in Mesopotamia in 6040, I guess that would be AD, the leader of the Mandaeans, Anush Bar Banka, is said to have appeared before the Muslim authorities, showing them a copy of the Genzaraba, the Mandaean holy book, and proclaiming the chief Mandaean prophet to be John the Baptist, who is also mentioned in the Quran as Yahweh ibn Zachariah. This identified Mandaeans as among the al-Khattab people of the book. Hence, Mandaeanism was recognized as a legal minority religion within the Muslim Empire. However, this account is likely apocryphal, since it mentions that Anush Barbanga traveled to Baghdad. It must have occurred after the founding of Baghdad in 762, if it took place at all. Nevertheless, at some point, the Mandaeans were identified as the Sabaeans, mentioned along with the Jews, the Christians, and Zoroastrians in the Quran as the people of the book. The earliest source to unambiguously do so was Hassan Bar Balul, citing that the Abbasid vizier Ibn Makla, though it is not clear whether the Mandaeans of this period already identified themselves as Sabaeans or whether the claim originated with Ibn Mukla. Mandaeans continue to be called Sabaeans to this day. Around 1290, the Catholic Dominican friar Ricardo da Monte de Croce was in Mesopotamia, where he met the Mandaeans and is possibly the first European source on the religion. He described them as believing in a secret law of God recorded in alluring texts, despising circumcisions, renovating John the Baptist above all, and washing repeatedly to avoid condemnation of God. Mandaeans were called Christians of St. John by members of the Discal Carmelite mission in Basra during the 16th and 17th centuries, based on reports from missionaries such as Ignatius of Jesus. Some Portuguese Jesuits have also met some St. John Christians around the Strait of Hormuz in 1559, when the Portuguese fleet fought the Ottoman army in Bahrain. Excuse me. I don't know why this alarm is still on here. Their belief, Mandaeism as a religion of the Mandaean people, is based on a set of religious creeds and doctrines. The corpus of Mandaean literature is quite large and covers topics such as eschatology and the belief of God and the afterlife. According to Bruka Nasare, the Mandaeans see themselves as healers of the worlds and generations and practitioners of the religion of mind, light, truth, and love, and enlightenment or knowledge. I think that's pretty dope. I definitely don't like the things they have been through because of their beliefs. I don't think anybody should be persecuted, unalived, or anything like that, especially just because they're a smaller group. It makes me think about me being an atheist or non-believers, because it's really just me against everyone else. And at any time, oh, you're wrong because you don't believe. God gave me the brain to not believe, to use critical thinking. But that's another story. I want to thank all y'all for stopping by. Again, to Faith, Lies, and Confusion. We will be back in a few days online. I don't know, which which outlet is going to be about or which one of my shows that I have, but I'll definitely be here. Thank y'all again, and good night.